Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The cold, sterile lights of University Hospital flickered faintly overhead, humming like they were alive with secrets, and the people who passed through the glass-fronted lobby could almost swear the air itself had frozen, because something tragic, earth-shattering, and unbearably human had settled over the entire building like fog on a winter morning. Doctors whispered in corners, nurses moved like ghosts across polished floors, and every single heartbeat inside those walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with the family tragedy unfolding behind the ICU doors. Hope Logan stood alone at the window, palms pressed flat against the cool glass, staring toward the pediatric intensive care wing where her daughter, her innocent, beautiful, golden-haired Beth, lay fighting for each second of breath, and her whole body shook not from cold, but from the unbearable truth burning through her veins that she might lose her child tonight, that the daughter she fought for, the baby she once believed dead, the gift stolen from her and returned by miracle, might slip away forever before sunrise. And Hope couldn't breathe, couldn't blink, couldn't move without feeling like the floor beneath her feet was tilting toward a black hole of grief. She whispered Beth's name like a prayer and a plea, voice trembling, desperate, her throat raw from hours of crying, because the doctors had said she had to wait, that only one parent at a time could enter, that the risk of infection was too high, that Hope needed to stay calm. But how could she possibly be calm when her little girl's life dangled from a thread so thin even angels might struggle to hold it? Her tears streaked down her cheeks as she turned her head and saw Liam Spencer at the far end of the hallway, shoulders hunched, hands buried in his hair, pacing with the kind of frantic energy that only fathers who feel helpless can understand, his whisper turning into a low moan, then into something primal and devastating, a scream that ripped through the hallway with such force the nurses stopped walking, visitors froze, and Hope clapped her trembling hands over her mouth because Liam Spencer was breaking, fully breaking, right there in front of everyone, and for a moment it felt like the whole world of Forrester Creations and the Spencer Empire had crashed into dust beneath the weight of losing a child. Liam's scream echoed off the sterile walls, bounced into the waiting room chairs, slid beneath the doors of patient rooms, and drifted under the fluorescent lights until it became the soundtrack of the night, one man's pain, amplified by the knowledge that his daughter, his baby girl, was slipping away just feet from where he stood. Hope pushed away from the glass and stumbled toward Liam, calling his name, whispering please, because she had never seen him look like this. Not during breakups, not during betrayals, not even when they believed Beth had died the first time. This was different, darker, more final, a sound ripped straight from the soul. Liam didn't even hear her approach, so lost in the storm inside his head that the world had shrunk to the pulse of monitors behind sealed doors, and when Hope touched his arm, he spun toward her, eyes red, chest heaving, and he grabbed her shoulders like she were the only thing tethering him to earth. "I can't lose her," he choked, voice shattered, tears flooding, and Hope pressed her forehead against his chest, whispering that she couldn't either, that she wouldn't survive it, that she needed Beth to live because she had already lost so much. Her innocence, her trust, her marriage, her peace, and losing Beth would rip whatever remained of her spirit into ash. The hallway around them seemed to stretch endlessly, nurses rushing, machines beeping from distant rooms, overhead announcements echoing through the air. But Hope and Liam moved as though trapped underwater, each breath thick and slow, each heartbeat stabbing with fear, because Beth's condition was worsening by the minute. The virus that had attacked her lungs was aggressive, unpredictable, and the treatment wasn't working fast enough. Doctors whispered terms like ventilator support, organ strain, oxygen deficiency, and Hope felt each word stab deeper than knives, because Beth had always been so strong, so full of laughter and sunshine, and now she lay motionless beneath plastic tubing and blinking monitors. Brooke Logan suddenly rounded the corner with Ridge Forrester on her heels, both pale as ghosts, and Brooke's eyes widened when she saw her daughter trembling in Liam's arms. She hurried forward, whispering Hope's name with the kind of mother's instinct that recognized a child on the verge of complete collapse. Brooke wrapped her arms around Hope, murmuring comfort through her own tears, rubbing her daughter's hair like she used to when Hope was a little girl waking from nightmares, and Ridge stood slightly behind, jaw clenched, fighting the urge to demand updates, to storm into the ICU, to rip apart anything that stood between Beth and survival. Bridget Forrester, still wearing scrubs stained with long hours and panic, emerged from the ICU doors just then, exhaustion dripping from every part of her, dark circles beneath her eyes, trembling fingers, shoulders slumped, and the family rushed to her, faces twisted by grief and expectation. Bridget explained quietly that Beth was still alive, still holding on, but things were changing rapidly. Her oxygen saturation had dropped again, and the doctors were preparing to put her into a medically induced coma to reduce strain on her small, fragile body. Hope dropped to her knees. It wasn't graceful. It was raw, wild, like gravity had yanked her down, and her sob echoed through the hallway louder than she intended, louder than she ever cried in her life. Liam fell with her, clutching her hand, and Brooke tried to lift her daughter back to her feet, but Hope shook her head violently, whispering, "No, no, no, she needs me. She needs her mother. I have to go in there, I have to see her, please, I need to see her before they put her under, before she closes her eyes. Please, Bridget, please." Bridget's face twisted with pain. She wanted nothing more than to say yes, to give Hope the comfort of holding her child one more time, but rules were strict and Beth's immune system was failing. Hope begged anyway, voice rising in volume until security guards glanced down the hallway, because she didn't care about protocols, didn't care about risk, didn't care about anything except seeing her baby. Liam whispered that he understood, he needed it too. He needed to whisper in Beth's ear that he loved her, that she was safe. But then a sound tore through the ICU wall, shrill, merciless. The heart monitor alarm. And everything froze. Hope stopped screaming instantly, hand clamped over her mouth as if silencing herself would help silence that noise. The awful warning that Beth's heart rhythm was failing. Nurses sprinted through the ICU doors, doctors yelled orders, and Bridget was gone in an instant, slamming the door shut behind her. Hope clawed at the glass, watching silhouettes move around her small daughter's bed. Shadows on curtains, frantic shapes leaning over her child, and Hope screamed Beth's name. Liam pounded the glass with both fists, voice cracking into a gravelly roar as he yelled, "Fight, baby, fight!" But all they could do was watch, because the door would not open for them, not now, not during crisis mode. Brooke sobbed into Ridge's chest, twisting his shirt into fists, and Ridge held her tight, eyes burning, because he knew this nightmare too well, losing children, nearly losing children. It haunted every parent in that hallway. Bridget's voice echoed faintly through the glass, shouting numbers, procedures, oxygen commands, and Hope could see little Beth's body convulsing beneath the straps, could see Liam's reflection trembling in the glass like a shattered mirror, and time twisted strangely around them. Seconds stretched into eternities, breaths into boulders pressing against lungs, and the entire hospital seemed to hush as though listening to Beth fight for her life. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was only minutes, the alarm stopped. Hope sagged against Liam, sobbing into his chest, trembling so violently that his arms had to wrap around her waist to keep her upright. Brooke slid down the wall beside them, face buried in her hands, Ridge kneeling to hold her, and visitors passing by covered their mouths, whispering prayers for the famous family whose tragedy was unfolding so publicly. When the ICU door opened again, Bridget emerged slowly, face streaked with tears, mask pulled down to her chin, breath quivering, and Hope lifted her head instantly. Liam bolted upright. Brooke grabbed Ridge's arm. Bridget swallowed, voice hoarse. "She's stable. For now." Hope sobbed again, collapsing forward into Liam's arms, whispering thank you to no one and everyone. But Bridget wasn't finished. "She's being placed on life support." Hope choked. Brooke gasped. Liam stepped backward like someone had punched him. "But you can see her," Bridget whispered. "Both of you. Just a few minutes." Hope lunged forward, nearly collapsing again, and Liam grabbed her waist, helping her toward the doors. They scrubbed their hands, put on gowns and masks, then stepped into the room where Beth lay so small, so pale, so fragile beneath tubes. Hope whispered her daughter's name and touched her hair, and Liam kissed her tiny fingers, and the machines beeped in slow rhythm like artificial lullabies. Hope begged Beth to wake up, begged her to stay, promised her future birthdays, future laughter, future summers running through fields at the cabin. Liam whispered stories into Beth's ear, describing the day she learned to walk, the little squeak in her giggle, the way she called him Daddy Bear. And though Beth lay silent, a single tear slipped down the side of her cheek. Hope froze. Liam gasped. The heart monitor beeped faster. And outside the room, Bridget stared through the window, whispering to Ridge and Brooke that there might still be a chance, that emotional response could spark neurological survival. But the night was far from over, and the doctors warned that the next hour would decide everything. So Hope stayed bent over the bed, forehead resting against her daughter's shoulder, whispering over and over, "Please don't leave me, not again." The clock ticked. Beth's heartbeat steadied. And in the hallway, Liam's earlier scream still echoed through the air like a ghost, reminding everyone that love, pain, hope, and tragedy live side by side in Los Angeles, and that the bold and the beautiful family was about to face a reckoning none of them could ever forget. The room felt impossibly small considering how enormous the moment was, and Hope could barely hear anything except the rhythmic beeping of Beth's monitors. Every machine seemed to pulse with purpose, respirator compressions whispering in mechanical repetition, for pumps clicking like metronomes of life, and beneath it all the faint hum of forced air pushing oxygen into her daughter's struggling lungs. Liam stood near the foot of the bed, hands gripping the cold metal rail, knuckles whitening, as if he could somehow anchor Beth to the earth by sheer force of love. For a long time neither parent spoke, not because they ran out of words, but because language suddenly felt too small to describe what it meant to stand between hope and death. Hope's fingertips trembled as she brushed hair away from Beth's forehead, noticing how chillingly cool her skin felt beneath the fluorescent lights. That coolness terrified Hope more than the wires and tubes. The coolness felt like departure, like fading warmth, and she wanted to press her own body heat into Beth to keep her soul tethered. Liam swallowed hard, forced himself to inhale, then whispered, "She squeezed my hand." "I swear she did." "Hope, did you see it?" Hope nodded, tears flooding again. "I did. I saw it." Neither cared whether it was reflex or miracle. What mattered was that it gave them oxygen to breathe, conviction to remain upright instead of collapsing into pieces on the sterile floor. Hope leaned closer and kissed Beth's cheek through the barrier of the mask over her own face. "Mommy's here," she whispered, voice quivering like broken glass. "And Daddy's here too. You don't have to fight alone." For a moment Beth's heart monitor beeped a little stronger, like it understood. Nurses outside the glass watched through the window, whispering that emotional contact sometimes did the impossible. Some hoped, some feared hope. Outside the ICU, the hallway was filling quickly, Brooke pacing in rigid squares, arms folded tight across her chest as if holding herself together by physical restraint. Ridge resting his forehead against the wall, eyes shut, whispering silent prayers. Steffi and Finn rushing into view, Finn still wearing scrubs from an emergency shift, Steffi breathless, hair windblown, mascara smeared from tears shed in the car. She didn't even wait for Brooke to explain. One look at the glass window revealing Liam and Hope inside was enough to send her legs shaking. Inside, Liam lifted his head toward Hope, voice barely audible. "I keep thinking about all the times I told Beth we'd always protect her," he whispered, forcing a breath through his cracked lips. "And now she's lying here fighting for her life and I don't know how to fix it. I would take this from her. I'd trade places without hesitation." Hope closed her eyes because she knew it was true. Not just poetic truth but actual reality. If the universe required sacrifice, Liam would give himself without a second thought. That truth made the sight of him more painful. His shoulders were shaking uncontrollably. He was on the cliff edge of losing composure again. Hope reached up, touched his cheek gently. "We are not losing her," she said, voice low but strong. "Not when we've already lived through losing her once. She fought her way back to us. She will not leave again." But after she spoke those words, doubt crept through her stomach like icy hands. What if Beth wasn't strong enough? What if the doctors were holding back the worst-case truth? What if this wasn't a fight their little girl could win? A doctor stepped inside suddenly, clipboard tucked under his arm. His name tag read, Dr. Marcus Hale, Pediatric Critical Care. His voice was steady, practiced, a man who had delivered more grief than victories throughout his career. "Mr. Spencer, Ms. Logan," he began softly, "I need to speak with you both outside for a moment." Hope's stomach plummeted. "No," she whispered sharply, holding Beth's limp hand tighter. "I'm staying with her. Say whatever you need to say here." The doctor hesitated. People who were trained to follow protocol always hesitated when parents shattered rules. Liam stepped closer, eyes sharp. "Tell us," he demanded softly. Dr. Hale nodded, adjusting his glasses. "Your daughter's vitals have stabilized temporarily, but the infection remains extremely aggressive. The medically induced coma is necessary to reduce stress on her organs, and the ventilator is now handling 97% of her breathing." Hope blinked rapidly. "What does that mean long-term?" "It means," the doctor continued, voice steady, The next 24 hours will determine whether her lungs can recover or whether she will require extracorporeal life support. Hope stared blankly, until the unfamiliar medical term snapped through the air like a whip. Explain, Liam demanded. ECMO, Dr. Hale clarified. A machine that circulates her blood outside her body and oxygenates it for her. Hope shook her head slowly, terrorizing. Like life support? More extreme, he confirmed. Liam leaned back, dizzy, gripping the metal footboard like it was all that kept him standing. Hope felt the world tilt violently beneath her. Why not start ECMO now? Liam asked. Because, Dr. Hale replied, the risk of organ shutdown increases if we transition prematurely. She may still turn around on her own. We're giving her body the chance to fight first. Hope whispered. And if she doesn't? Then we activate ECMO. But I want you to understand. He paused. His voice softened. ECMO is not a cure. It is time. Nothing more. Hope felt something inside her chest tear open. Liam's breath quickened into gasps. Hope looked toward Beth and whispered to the doctor. We want to try everything. Every option. Every chance. We don't give up. The doctor nodded, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. I never said anything about giving up. I only wanted you to understand the road ahead. Then he stepped back, leaving the parents alone in that shadow of truth. Hope stared at Beth's little fingers, tubes taped to her skin, and every memory flooded through her at once. The first time she held Beth in the cabin light, the way Beth giggled when butterflies landed on her hands in the Forester Gardens, the times they built sandcastles at the beach, Hope praying the ocean wouldn't wash their masterpiece away. Now the ocean outside this hospital room was grief, and the tide was already rising. Outside, Steffi stood frozen, watching Liam through the glass. She saw him kiss Beth's foot, saw his shoulders shake, saw agony carved into his face. And something in Steffi changed. Her feud with Hope, her rivalry, her jealousy, her resentment, melted instantly. None of it mattered. Not designs. Not Forester. Not history. Not grudges. Because what mattered was family. Steffi touched the glass, whispering, Stay with them, Beth, stay. Finn stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. His voice barely carried. I spoke with Bridget. They've done everything right. This infection just came out of nowhere. Steffi turned, pressing her face into Finn's chest, sobbing. Why her? Why any child? For once Finn had no medical explanation to soften the pain. Brooke stood beside Ridge, arms wrapped tight around herself. I can't lose another grandchild, she whispered. I can't watch my daughter go through this again. Ridge pressed his forehead against hers and whispered. She won't lose her. Not this time. Back inside, Liam and Hope stayed by Beth for an hour until Hope realized something terrifying. Beth's skin was colder. Her fingers less responsive. The heart monitor slower. Hope gasped. Liam, look. Liam followed her gaze, panic slicing through him. Doctor. The medical team rushed in again. Bridget was among them this time, her face whiter, jaw clenched. What's happening? Hope cried. Bridget checked readings. Her numbers are dropping again. We're moving closer to ECMO territory. Hope clutched Liam's arm, nails digging in. We need a miracle. Bridget paused, eyes softening. Sometimes, that's exactly what happens. She meant it. Then, lights flickered. Monitors spiked. Beth's heartbeat surged, stronger, clearer. Hope and Liam gasped. Brooke saw the reading through the glass and covered her mouth, crying out in relief. Steffi grabbed Finn. Ridge nearly fell backward. The heart monitor kept rising, slow, steady incline. Bridget's stunned whisper filled the room. She's responding to the antibiotic increase. Hope nearly collapsed. Liam kissed Beth's forehead. That's our girl, he cried. Fight. Fight. And for the first time since sunrise, Beth looked less like a fading light and more like a spark reigniting. But the night was far from over. The road to morning would be long, brutal, unforgiving. Every hour carried risk. Every breath could falter. Yet one thing was certain. No one in that hospital would leave Beth alone. Not ever again. Hope rested her head on the mattress, whispering, I'm not going anywhere. And Liam rested his hand on Beth's chest, letting tears drip onto her gown. Outside, Brooke prayed. Ridge comforted. Steffi promised silence to old rivalry. Finn offered every medical resource he could. And somewhere deep in Beth's unconscious world, the tiny girl fought, because love surrounded her completely. The next chapter would decide destiny. But tonight, the Logan, Spencer, and Forrester families were united in the one truth that defined everything in the bold and the beautiful. Love makes miracles. Even when science surrenders. Even when hope nearly dies. Beth wasn't done yet. And the world would hold its breath until she opened her eyes again.